Remember, there was that Lemo panel report. They met, they sat, they had a recommendation which they thought if it had been implemented, who knows what it might have stopped or prevented from happening. So that much did happen on the day. So we're focusing on the peace accords that have been signed, the kind of speeches being made at that time. Where are all of this leading us to? How can we stem the tide? Are those peace accords making any impact whatsoever? Let's move over to a panel of analysts who are here today with us to shed some light on this matter. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you for joining us again today.
Good evening, Chamberlain.
Well, discuss for us to bring back this hate speech, the peace accords that have been signed. Yes, we're over and done with the presidential elections, but this weekend is going to be another. But from the build-up to this one, actually some have thought, all right, having gone through the presidential one, it looks as though all the signs were there that we'll have a peaceful run this weekend. But then there's concerns from different states now. What have you seen so far?
Well, basically the mood with which we voted for the presidential elections was one that was applauded by all. You saw an overwhelming national will to vote peacefully. But then, even with the results having been announced so far, I, for one, am not expecting that both parties will not give each other a run for their money come the gubernatorial elections. We are going to see some last, I want to call it last pitched acts of desperation from people who are not willing to bend to the, what I want to call, new wind of change that has blown over electoral behavior in Nigeria. We saw something different. The world applauded us. The country has been the better for it. Our president, the incumbent, did something very few Nigerian leaders do. We can count them on our fingertips, who willingly concede to defeat. There's a lot of courage and valor in that singular act. And for the pockets of skirmishes and loss of lives that have so far transcended, I want to believe the police force and the law enforcement agencies are up to it. As at last time I did a cross-check, I know the IG has some people, over 100 of them, arrested, assisting them with their investigations. And I say it's also an opportunity for us to begin to actually backtrack through these people, and we'll get to their sponsors and probably even begin to keep dossiers on these people going forward. If people know that the intelligence agencies and the police force and law enforcement agencies keep dossiers on them, they will strive to keep a very clean record. Because I tell you something, if you decompose political clashes, it's all about the two major contenders. Okay, we cannot say which is involved, but it's about them, and it's money induced. Unfortunately, the victims are the dead. They end up actually trading in their lives for so pittance an amount, and eventually, whether their parties win or lose, they are the losers. For our law enforcement agencies, I want to say we started well, and we need to end it up that way. We're already on the home run. The world is waiting, the world is watching, and we also owe it to our president, the sitting president, the incumbent, to ensure that that for which he stood and identified with does not just get rubbished by people.
All right, Mr. Chukuma, what's your reading of the scenario?
Well, I think it's important to underscore what he said, that so far, although the death of every human being or injury should diminish us as human beings, but statistics make better sense in time series and comparative analysis. So if you compare, but this time in the 2011 election or even the preceding one, 2007 and 2003, to the extent that we are just seeing 58 figures, meant that the peace accord, held on. If you look at both the concession speech and the acceptance speech, the warmth, even the the call that we eventually that was leaked, and we saw the one they were laughing when they were exchanging these messages, which meant that the accord worked. But as I say, everything in politics is local, and the closest to local you can get is the state election, because the local government election has been bastardized by the State Electoral Commission. So, and because services is at this level of governance that most services are rendered, water, health, electricity now that have been sold to private interest group with state participation in it. So it's going to get intense, and unlike what happened before the election, where you could list the so-called battleground states, almost every state now is battleground, especially those held by PDP. If you look at the bandwagon effects that follow major elections, depending on who wins at the federal level. So all the parties are doing their best, to gain some advantage over the other, including using means that people should condemn. So as they were 3 days to the election, we have to watch closely to ensure that this thing that we started well ends well.
All right, let's go over to Professor Innocent. I beg your pardon. Chidi joins us from our studios in Abuja. Good evening, and thank you for joining us today. Well, are you surprised that we're back talking about hate speeches, the build-up to this time, the governorship and state houses of assembly elections, more so after we're over and done with the presidential elections? I hope you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
I think I can.
Okay,
good evening.
All right, good evening. Let me give you one more shot. I mean, are you surprised that we're back now talking about hate speeches and how people ought to conduct themselves, especially after the example set by the president?